Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Krishnastamyantu margasya Masasya Parameshwaraha Avirbho Bhuvasallilo Bhairavatma Satam Priya Namah Shivaya. Devotees of Bhagavan, again this morning this sloka is taken from the Shatarudra Samhita of Bhagavan, of Shiv Puran. This is the 63rd verse of the 9th chapter. Our little Katha this morning will be from Shiv Puran, from the 8th and 9th chapter of the 3rd canto, which is Shatarudra Samhita of Shiv Puran. This verse here that we chanted is saying that Krishnasya, it means that the month is divided in two halves in the lunar calendar. Krishna Paksh, Sukla Paksh, bright and dark half. It says Margasya, that's the name of the month, the Hindi month. In the month of Margashirsh, in the dark half, in Krishna Paksh, according to this verse, it was the 8th day, Krishna Ashtam. Ashtam here means 8th. And so on the 8th day of the dark half of the month of Margashirsha, which is a Hindu month, that is the day that Bhagavan Shankar took manifestation. Bhagavan Shankar has taken many manifestations. Bhagavan Shankar means Lord Shiva. And so one of his manifestations is known as Bhairav, or Bhairav, Kaal Bhairav, as we know. Now this day was a few days ago. This was, I think, last Monday. According to this count, this was on the 8th day of this month of Margashirsha. So this is a small katha where Bhagavan Shankar is saying to Sanat Kumar. Sanat Kumar, as you know, is one of the 4 mind-born sons of Brahma. So he's saying that, listen, O Sanat Kumar, to the appearance, to the manifestation of Bhairav. Not only because of the knowledge, but according to Bhagavan Shankar here, in Shiv Puran, when one listens to this katha, then devotion for Bhagavan Shiva increases. Devotion for your particular form of God increases, and one becomes more steady, of course, in their devotion. So the katha goes that, this is the 8th verse now, that one day, while Brahma was stationed in the beautiful summit of Mount Meru, that all the celestial sages, they approached Brahmaji. When we know Brahma is known as the creator in the Hindu Trinity. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the creator, sustainer, and reabsorber, or the destroyer of the universe. So Brahmaji is known the 4-headed creator of the universe. So while he was on the tip of the mountain, Meru, the sages approached and they decided to ask him a question. Their question was designed to extract the truth of what reality is. Reality in terms of philosophy, of the creation of the world. So they asked of Brahmaji, and very respectfully, the sages said, "O Creator, O Brahmaji, that please tell us what is that soul meaning like the only unchanging entity." Unchanging entity, obviously this would mean that which doesn't change. Or tell us more about the absolute reality, about God, in short. So Bhagavan Shankar is saying, Brahmaji, when he was ready to give his answer, Brahmaji is also known as a lotus born, right? Born from the lotus flower, the Kamal flower. But for those of you who have been following us in our satsang, we would have explained the difference between Devatas and Bhagavan. And that is something hopefully that we still remember. That there's a difference between, we worship Devatas, we worship Bhagavan, but there's a difference. According to the scriptures, not according to me, according to all the scriptures unanimously, the Devatas are called celestial beings and Bhagavan is Bhagavan. Eternal God. Brahmaji resides in what is called the topmost of the 7 heavens. Bhu, Bhuva, Maha, Jana, Tapa. The top one is called Satyalok, right? Bhu, Bhuva, Swa, Maha, Jana. Then the top one is Satyalok. So Brahmaji, who is the creator, he resides in Satyalok. However, Brahmaji is considered, and this again might be controversial for those who don't follow philosophy, but Brahmaji, being the creator, is entrusted by Bhagavan to administer over the purposes of creation. Just like how Agni Devata represents fire, or fire is known as Agni, and the wind is known as Vayu, and the rain is known to have come from Indra. These are celestial beings entrusted or operate with the responsibility over these different categories of creation or functions of creation. In the same way, Brahmaji is the creator. So when you're from the cosmos, from a level of the heavens, then you're not necessarily Bhagavan, so you would not have the knowledge of Bhagavan. You would have the knowledge required to do what you are supposed to do and do it successfully. So here Brahmaji is answering to the saints and sages, but he's answering based on his knowledge of Brahma. So he said to the sages that, look, all of you should listen to me very attentively, because now I shall describe to you the great unchanging entity as it really is. So Brahmaji decides that now he'll give an explanation to the saints and sages as to really what reality is. And now we'll take this verse from the 13th verse of the 8th chapter of Shiv Puran. Let us see what Brahmaji said to the saints and sages. Narayan, Narayan, Bhajuman Narayan, 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 Bhajuman Narayan, 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 Bhajuman Narayan. Jagado Niraham Dhata Swayambhu Rajaishwara अनादिभागहं ब्रह्मा यके आत्मनिरञ्जन नारायण नारायण भजमन नारायण भजमन नारायण भजमन नारायण. So Brahmaji is now, he's now explaining to the saints and sages. He says here, and Brahmaji has used here some very powerful words that mean Bhagavan. He says to them that, look, I am the material cause of the universe. I am the creator. I am the self-born. I am the unborn Lord. I am the primordial being. I am Brahman. So here obviously we can see that Brahmaji has called himself by some really big names, names that are not befitting for the creator. If you think that Brahmaji is Bhagavan, then if we don't follow philosophy, then we'll understand, but then we can listen with an open mind so that we can actually follow what Sanatan philosophy is, not necessarily what we may have learned or think, right? So what I'm telling you here is from the scriptures. So Brahmaji has called himself here Swayambhu. He has called himself Ishwar. He has called himself Anadi. He has called himself Niranjan, according to this verse. So these are all names referred to God, to Bhagavan, eternal God. So this is not necessarily correct. Brahmaji is not Anadi. He's not unborn. He's not the primordial being, meaning the being that has been existing from the very beginning of time. Now, Brahma has been existing from the beginning of time, having been created by Bhagavan, but not this particular Brahma. What do I mean by that? Because Brahma, the creator, has a lifespan. Now, most of you know that, so I'll not go over the details. You know that the lifespan of Brahma is 100 years. 100 not human years, but divine years. And for those of you who cannot remember the calculation, just in brief, Kal Yuga is 432,000 years, and so, Dwapar Yuga is 864,000 years. The one before that, Treta Yuga, was 1,728,000 years, and then before that, actually Satyug. So it's 432, 864. It's Kal Yuga, Dwapar, Treta. Treta, meaning the third one from bottom up, is 1,296,000 years, and then that 4 times is 1,728,000 years. Now that is called one Chatur Yuga, all the 4 yugas in one. I'm doing this very briefly, so please try to keep up. That is called one Chatur Yuga, and one Chatur Yuga is 4,320,000 years. Now that has to be measured or multiplied by 71, and that is equal to what is called one Manvantar. That's 306,720,000 years. When you take that and multiply it 14 times, 14 Manvantar is equal to 1 Kalpa, and 14 Manvantar is 4,294,080,000 years. That amount of time is equal to 12 hours of Brahma. The 4 billion years is human years. I remember one time I was giving this explanation. This is the Bhagavad Gita and it's in Ved. A person was listening and he said, I shouldn't be mentioning these things, and quote unquote, because these things are not espoused by science. I don't want to make any comments on that, but it's unfortunate that if that's how we see things, we don't depend on science from a Sanatan and scriptural standpoint to endorse what is in the scriptures. It's actually the other way around. And science has found out by now many, many things that is said in the Hindu scriptures. Many things, and you know most of them, or you know some of them. However, these numbers can, you can get confused with them, but this is what is in the scriptures, right? You can also find this in Bhagavad Gita. So now that's 12 hours of Brahma. And then when there's a dissolution, partial dissolution, pralay, then that same amount of time is a night of Brahma when there's nothingness in the world, when the world is submerged in water. Now, that is equal to 24 hours of Brahma, one cycle of each. Brahma lives for 100 years, right? So do the math if you want. So, even though that is such a long period of time, it doesn't mean that Brahma is unborn and he's eternal. Brahmaji has a lifespan. Brahmaji lives in Satyalok, which is the highest heaven, but that is also a destructible part of the creation. That is a part of the cosmos, as we call it, and the whole cosmos is temporary. From Brahmaji coming down at a time of Mahapralay, total dissolution. That's more philosophy, we'll do that some other time. So Brahmaji continues to say that, look, O saints and sages, that I am the instigator of these worlds that you see. And I am also the destroyer. Remember Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, the destroyer is known as Bhagavan Shankar. That there is none greater than I am. This is the 14th verse. Brahmaji actually said this according to Shiv Puran to the saints and sages. That there is nobody greater than me. That I am also the destroyer of this universe, which is not true, we know that. Actually, Ved tells us something very different, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, which is a third of a Ved, in the second mantra, there's a question there. And the question is, Kaha Paramo Devaha? That who is the supreme power, the supreme Brahm? Remember, Brahmaji is saying he's Brahm. Brahma and Brahm are two different things. Brahmaji is the creator. Brahm means formless God. So the question is asked here, that who is that form of God? Who is that supreme power above whom there is none? Ved is saying. Ved also gives the answer in the second mantra. In the answer part of it, it says, Krishno vai paramam daivatam. Atharva Ved is saying that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So Bhagavan Vishnu is hearing this conversation and he's saying, hey Brahmaji, that this is not proper what you're saying. This is being spoken out of ignorance. Without knowing the real reality, the great reality, without knowing Bhagavan, you're speaking like Bhagavan. That this is being done, so carelessly on your part. And so now Bhagavan Vishnu, according to this Katha, we have condensed the Katha to make it small, right? But now Bhagavan Vishnu is explaining what the reality is, but Brahmaji wants to hear nothing. Vishnu Bhagavan is saying he's the sustainer and things like that. Brahma doesn't want to hear anything. Brahmaji knows who Brahma is, and that is all he's concerned with at this point in time. I'll tell you a little story that took place. How do we know that there is not one Brahman? Brahma is the eternal God. It's been there from the beginning and will never change. Brahmaji went to Golok Dham to meet with Bhagavan. And so at the doorway, he has to go through the doorkeeper. And so he was asked, who are you? Brahmaji says, Are, you're asking me who am I? Go and tell Bhagavan that this is Brahma. Bhagavan says, okay, let him in. Let him come in. So Brahmaji went inside now to meet with Bhagavan. Bhagavan says, Katha is asking him, please introduce yourself. Who are you? He said, Are, you're Bhagavan and you don't know who I am? I am the creator. I am Brahma. How come you don't know who Brahma is? So Bhagavan says, I know who Brahma is. Which Brahma though? Which Brahma are you talking about? What? Which Brahma? There's only one Brahma, Bhagavan, you know that. Now there's there's one Brahma only. So, which is not actually the case, right? Let's check Shiv Puran and see how it helps us to understand who Brahma is and how what is Bhagavan really doing, asking Brahma that question. Srimanarayana Narayana Hari Hari, Srimanarayana Narayana Hari Hari, Tere Leela sabse nari nari, Hari Hari, Tere Leela sabse nari nari, Hari Hari, Bhajman Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Jaj Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Nabhi Kamala Koshatu Kotisha Kamalasana, Kalpe Kalpe Purahanyam, Yam Yoga Baladivo, Shriman Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Shriman Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Tere Leela sabse nari nari, Hari Hari, Tere Leela sabse nari nari, Hari Hari, Shriman Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Shriman Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Jaj Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Jaj Narayana Narayana Hari Hari, Jaj Narayana Narayana Hari Hari. Nabhi Kamalakoshaaktu Kotisha Kamalasana. So this is the 28th verse of the 9th chapter of Shiv Puran. Here it explains that Bhagavan is saying to Brahmaji that, hey, this verse is in Shiv Puran, like I said, with an explanation that it is true, Nabhi Kamal, Kamal means a Kamal flower. It is true that from within the lotus, Nabhi means navel. From my navel, Bhagavan is saying now, it is from the lotus of my navel. Some of you will also know that Bhagavan Vishnu is saying, and it's fine. Vishnu, Sri Krishna, all the same. From my navel, from the lotus of my navel, not only one Brahma, but crores of Brahma came out. Kalpe kalpe pura. That kalpa after kalpa, you remember what is a kalpa, right? Kalpa after kalpa after kalpa. Crores of Brahma came out from the lotus of my navel. So this is Bhagavan speaking. So this is also an indication that here, this Brahmaji thinks that he's Brahma alone, but Bhagavan now is explaining and helping Brahma to understand that no, you are not the only Brahma. There are countless Brahmas in the universe. So Bhagavan helps Brahmaji to understand, Bhagavad Mahapuran says the same thing. Taloka padmam sa uva eva Vishnu tasyam chachambhoduha karnikaya bhavastito lokam pashyamana. This is the third book, the third canto, the 8th chapter, 16th verse of Bhagavad Mahapuran is saying the same thing, that Brahma was born out of the lotus. Here it says, Evam Vishnu. Brahmaji was born out of the lotus, of the lotus flower from the navel of Vishnu Bhagavan. The other verse teaches us that didn't happen one time, it happened so many times. If you're following philosophy, you'll also know that there's a Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh in every solar system. A long time ago, there wasn't science to support what the scriptures were saying, but now there is. That we thought there's one solar system, there's Earth, and there's Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. No. There's a Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh for each star. Star meaning the sun. Each star has an Earth planet, and every Earth planet, there is a Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. They preside over the Earth planet, over the solar system. I think there's a recent study as of 2016 that says that the sun, our sun that we know, the SUN, is one of 100 to 400 billion stars. 100 to 400 billion stars where? Just in the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way is sort of our neighborhood, right? That's what we call it, the Milky Way. Up to 400 billion worlds, as we call it, suns, solar systems, would be in the Milky Way. The study also estimated that the observable universe, they use the word observable, meaning we know what the observable means, what they can observe, that the observable universe contains about 2 trillion galaxies. We know the galaxies, there are galaxies, and then there are clusters of galaxies, and then there are superclusters of galaxies, etc., etc. So there can be up to 2 trillion galaxies and up to 400 billion stars. Earth, planets in one galaxy, that's too much information. However, in every one of these stars, there's a Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh according to our scriptures. Devi Bhagavat actually says that it is possible to count the grains of sand in the whole world. Every grain of sand. It is possible to count that, but not possible to count the amount of solar systems or the planetary systems, according to Devi Bhagavat. That 2016 study I told you about says that a deeper science looks into the cosmos, the more galaxies they find and they see. So there's no end to this. And to everyone, there's Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. So Brahmaji is getting a lesson from Bhagavan Vishnu. Hey, no. You're just one. They're uncountable Brahmas. Brahmaji didn't know that because he's Devata. So Brahmaji continues with his boasting, with his speaking without the required and necessary knowledge. And so Bhagavan Shankar is listening to this, and Bhagavan Shankar is getting more and more uncomfortable. And so he decided to intervene into this conversation. So what happened is that Bhagavan Shankar, having heard all of this, a great flame manifested itself. Brahmaji and Bhagavan Vishnu are looking. What's happening? A huge flame. Flame was so big that it filled the space between heaven and earth. Brahma and Vishnu are looking carefully, and as they look, what they saw was a shape. There's a shape in the form of a human being, a man. In the middle of this mass of flame. Not only was it the shape of a man, it was beautiful. Brahma and Vishnu are observing that this is a beautiful thing. It's the shape of a man in the middle of this flame. So they weren't sure what that is, but Shiv Puran helps us to understand what that is. These are the words of the 40th verse of Shiv Puran, of the 9th chapter. Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Hari Om Shivaya Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Om Shivaya, Hari Om, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya. Vidhi sambhavaye dyava tattvavat vilochana drishta kshanena cha maha purusho nilalohita. Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Hari Om Shivaya, Om Shivaya, Hari 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 Om Shivaya. Sri Parvataye Pataye Namaha. Shankar Bhagavan ki jai. And so here, it is said according to the Katha that Brahmaji got so upset. Why? Because he's not speaking from his divinity, he's speaking from a fifth head of Brahma. Fifth head, figuratively speaking, that a whole head is formed in Brahma, a whole head of Abhiman, a whole head of ego, a whole head of pride and anger has been formed in Brahma. One that is very, very powerful because he's the creator. And so Bhagavan Shankar decides, he knows what is happening to Brahma, that a whole fifth head is formed with how the insistence of Brahma as to who he is, lacking the required knowledge and misleading others. So Brahmaji continues to look, and he's looking according to this verse, the 40th and the first verse of this chapter, the 9th chapter. Here, as he looks more carefully, he realized he saw what? In this form, in the midst of the fire, he saw a three-eyed person. Remember the verse said? Trivilochan, three-eyed. What else did he see? Trishula Panir Bhar Laksho. In the 41st verse, Trishula Panir means this person that is in the midst of the fire is also carrying Trishula Pani, Trishul in his hand. Bhar Laksho means, there's a trident in his hand and there's another eye in his forehead, three-eyed. He also saw Nago Dupa Vibhushana. Nago means here the snake. He saw serpents. And the crescent moon. The crescent moon constituted with all other ornaments in this form that is within the fire. This form of Bhagavan Shankar, according to Shiv Puran, remember the last word of the 40th verse, it says Nila Lohit. Now Bhagavan Shankar here, according to Shiv Puran, is called Nila Lohita. Nila Lohita here means, Nil means blue. Lohit means red. Right? So that, right off the bat, that's a little bit confusing. A little bit against what we know. But this deludes Brahma. Brahma didn't understand what was happening. But upon seeing this, to maintain his course, sometimes we do something, we said something, or we did something, and then later on we realize it's wrong. But now not to look bad in front of the people who said it, or to the people who said it, or to have a negative, or to accept that we're wrong, to accept our mistake and to move on, correcting the situation. Sometimes people live their whole lives doing more and more wrong things, saying more and more things that are not true. Why? To keep justifying the one mistake they made. It is human to make mistakes, but it's magnanimous of any human being. It's almost divine to accept a mistake when you make it. Brahma wasn't willing to do that. So he decided to fight back, to maintain his position and to fight back. So this was Bhagavan Shankar, named Neela Lohit. And this name of Bhagavan, he's not only called Neela Lohit in Shiv Puran here, Bhagavan is called Neela Lohit in many other scriptures. In the Linga Puran, in the first chapter and the second chapter, Shankar Bhagavan is called Neela Lohit. In the 15th chapter of the Atharva Ved, he's called Neela Lohit. The 16th chapter of the Yajur Ved, he's called Neela Lohit. And so that might help us to arrive as to why some people, especially in one part of Guyana at least, maybe not the whole country, in the Barbis area, when people do Shiv Puja, then they put up a purple flag. Not everyone, when they perform Shiv Puja, they put up a white flag. Some people put purple flag. I've seen it. That's where I'm from. And so you wonder, where did they get this from? You can say, well, it's not Neelakanta, that is blue. Where did you get purple from? Well, I think, I can't remember when I used to mix colors. I'm not sure when I was growing up we used to have colors to mix them. But if you mix blue and red, I think that will become a purplish color, if I'm not wrong, right? Maybe you can try it out at home. Give your little child to try it out. If you mix blue and red, it might just become purple. And so probably Neela Lohit, meaning blue and red, if you put it together, it becomes purple. So we have concluded that Bhagavan Shankar is purple in color. However, it's okay to, when you put up your flag, to put purple, put white, whatever you want to put is fine. We have to always realize that, look, we're not worshipping the flag. This is not the purpose of our puja. The purpose of our puja is we're worshipping Bhagavan Shankar. We're doing Linga Abhishekam or puja to Lord Shiva, not to the flag. The flag is just something that is hoisted afterwards to signify the victory of performing our puja. The flag story is another one, but just quickly, in the West Indies, or at least in Guyana, we call it the jhandi, right? The flag that you put there is actually a jhanda. Jhanda is the flag that you put there on that pole, that big flag. Jhandi is actually the little flag, a little one that you might put on a little bamboo like that, and you stick it by the Bedi or by the Havan Kun or wherever, Navagraha, Durga Puja, those little ones. That is Jhandi. Jhandi is small flag. Jhanda is the big flag. But we go further in Guyana, when we have Hanumanji Puja, we call it Jhandi. When someone says, many people still say it, when they say Jhandi, means you have Hanumanji Puja. No, that's not. That's Hanumanji Puja. Or Shiv Puja or Durga Puja. But it has become synonymous with Hanumanji Puja, Jhandi, but it's Jhanda, not Jhandi. Right? It's a Hanumanji Puja and you're hoisting a Jhanda. Right? Just for a little bit of information. However, if you put a white flag, just as a side information here, if you put a white flag, it is not incorrect. That is the form of Bhagavan that we worship, the Shiva that we worship as Shankar Bhagavan, Shambhavaya cha, Mayo Bhavaya cha, that form of Shankar Bhagavan, who sits at the top of Kailash, that form of Bhagavan, the original form of Shiva, is white. And that is why we put white color flag, to represent that form of Shiva. We read the mantra, Karapura Gauram Karunavataram Sansara Saram Ujagendra. Karapura Gauram here means white. Karapur means camphor, the color of camphor. Many of us know the Aarti as well, and when we sing the Aarti, remember Bhagavan Jai Shiva Omkara Swami, Jai Shiva Omkara. One of the verses in the arti goes like, Shvetambar Pitambar Bagambar Ange. Shvetambar means white. Shvet means white. So Shvetambar means his body. Ambar means like plural for Amba, the limbs. So the body of Bhagavan Shankar is white. But this slok and this arti, if you want to be very critical, then you will go like, well, I understand that, but what is the source? Where did the slok get that from? Who made that slok? And who made the arti? How do we know that Bhagavan Shankar? There's a beautiful slok that is in support of that. This is how it goes. Karpura Gauram Gaurisham Sarvalankaradharinam Sitabasmal Saddeham Sitabasram Mahojvalam. Actually, this is Shiv Puran. So Shiv Puran, this is in the Shiv Mahatam, right? The Shiv Mahatam is found in the beginning of Shiv Puran. It's also found in the Skanda Puran. The Shiv Mahatam is found in the Skanda Puran. In the fourth verse, the fourth chapter rather, and the 45th verse in the Shiv Mahatam, it says Karpura Gauram Gaurisham. Karpura Gauram here means that Bhagwan, the color of Bhagwan Shankar is white. It goes further, it says Sita Basmal, Sita Vasram. Seet means white here in Sanskrit. Sita Bhasma means that he's smeared with ashes, white ashes all over his skin, all over his body. And Sita Vasram, Vasra means clothing, that he also wears white clothing. So that will probably justify, not probably, that tells us that the color of Bhagwan is white. He wears white clothing, he smears white ashes on his skin, and this is coming from Shiv Puran. So if you're sticking white flag, fine. If you're sticking, what is it called, purple flag, then, I'm not sure who is it to tell you that you're incorrect, but whatever makes you feel better. See, the difference is Nila Lohita is an aspect of Bhagavan Shankar. When you worship the Shankar Bhagavan who exists, who resides on Kailash, then that is white. So for that reason, you should put white. The rest of it is for information's sake. Right? So, the color of Bhagavan Shankar, as we know. Okay, so coming back to the Katha, to follow up with Nila Lohita and to bring our Katha, how did Bhairav, or how did this happen and for what reason? Shiv Puran continues to tell us. Nilakant Mahadeva Dayalu Mahadeva Dayalu Jai Bholenath Jai Mahadeva Jai Shiva Shankar Jai Avinashi Jai Bholenath Jai Mahadeva Jai Shiva Shankar Jai Avinashi Nilakant Mahadeva Dayalu Nilakant Mahadeva Dayalu Nilalohit Jane Tvam Mang Bhairi Chandrasekhara Balastalan Mama Pura Rudra Pradurabhavan Nilakant महादेव दयालु नीलकंठ महादेव दयालु। जय भोलेनाथ जय महादेव, जय शिव शंकर जय अविनाशी। जय भोलेनाथ जय महादेव, जय शिव शंकर जय अविनाशी। जय भोलेनाथ जय महादेव, जय शिव शंकर जय अविनाशी। Here the slok says, Nila lohita jane tvam. Nila lohita jane tvam, that Brahma now is saying. Remember I said before that he has to continue justifying all the wrong things he said. So he says it. He recognized that this is Nila Lohit. He's Bhagavan Shankar in another form, another manifestation. He says, I know you, O Nila Lohit. That do not be afraid. Brahmaji is telling to Bhagavan Shankar, don't be afraid, O moon-crested one. He saw all the, Bhagavan Shankar is carrying the moon and all that. That I know you, you're Rudra. You came out formally from my forehead. Brahmaji is saying to Bhagavan Shankar. And when you came out of my forehead, this is according to the 42nd and 43rd verses, when you came out of my forehead, you started crying. And when you cried, I gave you that name Rudra. So this name Rudra has been given to you by me. So, oh my dear son, seek refuge in me, and I shall take care of you. I will take care of you. Brahmaji is saying to Bhagavan Shankar. So Shankar Bhagavan, thinking that now that Brahmaji would see and be corrected, accepting his mistake and move on, correct the situation, Shankar Bhagavan is getting, ravenous. He's getting upset and more disappointed as to the audacity of Brahma. So Bhagavan Shankar, upon hearing all the things Brahma had to say, what did he do? He did something to ensure that whenever a situation like this comes up again, that there's an aspect from his manifestation that would always be available to take care of situations. You see, because Shankar Bhagavan is what? Remember Ved reminds us, Namashambhavaya cha, Mayo Bhavaya cha, Namashankaraya cha, Mayaskaraya cha, Namah Shivaya, Shivataraya. The explanation, it serves to inform us in great detail as to who Bhagavan Shankar is. But in the beginning, just the first word, Namashambhavaya cha. Sham means peace. Shambhavaya means he who is the distributor, the embodiment and the distributor of that peace. Mayo Bhavaya cha, the embodiment of happiness and the distributor of that happiness. So Bhagavan Shankar clearly is the one who likes to sit peacefully at the summit of Kailash, be in samadhi and enjoy his peace, and gives that peace to devotees who seek it. He doesn't want to be in the middle of all these difficult situations because he prefers to be peaceful. And so Bhagavan Shankar is manifested in different ways. In this way, is manifested a very fierce form to ensure that there's always some part of him that will be present to take care of situations like this when they occur. Here's what happened. Jai Shiva Shankar Mahakal Hare, Jai 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 Tilochan Kaal Hare, Jai Mahakal Hare. Jai 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 Tilochan Kaal Hare. Jai 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 Pratipal Hare. Jai 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 Mahakal Hare. Jai Shiva Shankar Mahakal Hare. Jai 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 Tilochan Kaal Hare. Jai 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 Pratipal Hare. Jai 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 Mahakal Hare. Jai Shiva Shankar Mahakal Hare. Jai 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 Tilochan Kaal Hare. Sakopasta Sumatpadya Purusham Bhairavam Kvachit Prajalantam Sumehasa Pritya Cha Parameshwara. Hari Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankar Bhagavan Ki Jai. And so now this rage that Bhagavan Shankar has been in listening to Brahma, continuing in giving the wrong impression to everyone and to the world, Bhagavan Shankar became very angry, and from that form of his emanated another form. That form is known as Kaal Bhairav. Kalavarajase Sakshat Shashaste Kaal Bhairava. So Bhagavan Shankar now is saying that, O Bhairav, that if the fact that you have now taken manifestation, that your first job is to ensure that you sever this fifth head of Brahma, metaphorically speaking, figuratively speaking, this fifth head that Brahmaji has formed for himself, that is so strong and so powerful, that your form, this terrible form, Bhairav, is to take care of situations like this. Your first job would be to knock this erroneous train of thought away and out of Brahmaji. Bhagavan Shankar is saying that you're called Bhairav. Bhairav means, Bhai means fear, right? So this is why Bhairav has gotten this name, Bhai, coming from fear, that when those who are doing that which is incorrect should be fearful of this form of God, because they can be corrected in the same way that Brahmaji will be corrected. And so the verse continues to tell us that Kaal Bhairav, another name for this form that Bhagavan Shankar has created, is Kaal Bhairav. He's also called Kalaraj. Kaal Bhairav, Kalaraj means that because he'll be the controller of time. Kaal means time, Kaal means death. That Shankar Bhagavan is saying to Bhairav that you shine like the god of death. And so because of that you will be called Kalaraj, the king of death. That you have a very fearsome, fearful looking, and so because of that you'll be called Bhairav. And together, because death is afraid of you, time is afraid of you, and you are so frightening in appearance that you will be called Kaal Bhairav. Because of these terrifying features that you have, you will be called Bhairav, and together Kaal Bhairav. And so this is how, according to Shiv Puran, that Kaal Bhairav, this manifestation of Bhagavan Shankar, came into being. Why? Because Bhagavan Shankar wants to ensure that he is able to represent his devotees when things are very difficult, so that Bhagavan Shankar, he can also be there to give blessings, to give peace, to give happiness. But before we end the Katha, he said something to to Bhairav. He said something to Kaal Bhairav, and he said to him, Kaal, there are many, Mahakal temple in India and things like that. If you know the Jyotir, Dwaras Jyotirlinga, it's mentioned there, Saurastra Somanatham cha Sri Shaila Mallikarjunam Ujjainyam Mahakalam. Mahakal is referring to Bhagavan Shankar in this aspect as Mahakal, as Kala Bhairav, meaning suppressing the wicked souls. This aspect of Bhagavan Shankar will be known as the suppressor of the wicked souls and the ones who will be devouring sins from the lives of his devotees. But Kala Bhairav had to have some kind of residence, remember, because Shankar Bhagavan lives on the tip of Kailash. So let's close our Katha here with what Shankar Bhagavan says to Kala Bhairav. Where would he reside? हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी सोमनाथ गंगे काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी सोमनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे यो मे मुक्तिपुरी काशी सर्व्यां यो हि गरीयसी अधिपत्यं च तस्यास्ते कालराज सदैव हि हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी सोमनाथ गंगे काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी सोमनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे हर हर महादेव शंभो काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे काशी सोमनाथ गंगे काशी विश्वनाथ गंगे Yo me mukti puri kashi. If you're listening to the verse, then you'll figure this out already. Mukti puri. Mukti puri means city. Mukti means liberation. That O Kalaraj, Adhipatyang chatasyaste Kalaraja sadaivahi. Bhagavan Shankar is calling him Kalaraj. Remember we explained that before. So Kalaraj, you will reside permanently in Mukti Puri. Mukti Puri means Kashi. Kashi in India now is known as Banaras, Varanasi. All the same place, different names for the same place. Mukti Puri means, it is written in the scriptures that those who live in Kashi, many West Indians even have gone to Kashi. Whenever a West Indian goes to India, they have to go to Kashi, Varanasi, because most West Indians are devotees of Bhagavan Shankar. And so if you're not devotee of Bhagavan Shankar, you go to Kashi, because Kashi is known as the spiritual capital of India. Right? It is known as Mukti Puri. People go there. This is another story. People go there when they know they're about to die. Kashi has hotels, places to stay. One time I even saw it on CNN. The Hotel of Death is how it was labeled on CNN. Why? Because people go there to stay until they die. Why? Because it is said according to the scriptures that those who die in Kashi attain mukti. That is why according to this verse it is called Mukti Puri, the city of liberation. Why? Because this is Bhagavan Shankar's own city. It is said that this city, Kashi, sits on the Trishul of Bhagavan Shankar. And it is a promise by Shankar Bhagavan that if you die in Kashi, you attain mukti. So this is why, you see, Kala Bhairav, the king of death or the conqueror of death, what does that mean? If you conquer death, what does it mean? It doesn't mean that you will not die from this physical body. You will die, of course, from the physical body at some point in time. Hopefully, everyone lives more than 100 years and things like that. But there will be a time when we'll have to leave. But to conquer death means to become immortal. To conquer death means to attain mukti. How do you attain mukti? This is why Kalaraj, Bhagavan Shankar tells him to reside in Kashi. Because only when the conqueror of death resides in Kashi, then everyone who resides there would also conquer death. So Kaal Bhairav, according to Bhagavan Shankar and Shiv Puran, resides in the city of Kashi because this is what is advised by Bhagavan Shankar. This is what is told by Bhagavan Shankar for Kaal Bhairav to reside in Kashi so that devotees can become immortal. They too can attain mukti. Shiva Shankar Bhagavan ki jai. So my dear friends, devotees of Bhagavan, we'll bring our Katha there. This is a big Katha. It's chapter 8 and chapter 9. We tried our best to condense it so that we can just bring you the main verses. And when we listen to these Kathas, Katha is what? Katha literally means story, right? Katha philosophically means that which brings you closer to Bhagavan. That is the reason of Katha. This is why God has put the stories and the philosophy in story form in our scriptures so that we can remember them easily and we can be influenced to come closer to Bhagavan. So when we listen to Katha, we must listen to actually, when we dissect it, that we must get something out of it, not only the story side of it, but something that can apply to our lives. That we should be able to ask ourselves when we listen to Katha, that how is that applicable to my life? We would see here that Brahmaji has made a terrible mistake, and the error of Brahma and the actions that followed because of Brahma's error, and what we can learn based on what is related in the Katha. First of all, we can safely say that all of this happened because of the self-acclaimed status of Brahma. Where does the self-acclaimed status come from? It comes from our abhiman, our false pride. Talking about what we are, not bothering about who we are. That is the bigger question for us in life, not what we are. Being very, very boastful. You're so powerful. You can do all things, even though it's not true. Whether it's your truth or the truth, it doesn't matter. It has to be, it cannot be your truth, it has to be the absolute truth. If you believe that to be the case, it doesn't matter. It's not true to begin with, and there will be consequences. So our truth, which is something that is being said today, your personal truth, our truth, etc., let's worry with the scriptures and absolute truth, and not go with our abhiman and start fabricating anything that we think is true. It has to be true, not if we think it is true. So fabrication is what Brahmaji did here. Sometimes we say things to make ourselves look good, especially to others. When we do that, we always have to remember that there's a greater entity that's listening to us. We all believe in a greater entity, in God. By whatever name you call God, it doesn't matter. These days, some people say universe, they're scared to say God. Well, at least in Sanatana Dharma, the universe also means God. And we explained that when we started reading Bhagavad Gita, if you remember. That Bhrumirapo Analo Vayu Kam Brahma Buddhireva Cha. Remember? All these elements that you see make up the world, they are all my energy. So the universe also means God, but we can explain that in more detail some other time. But whether you call it universe, you call it God, you call it spirit, you call it whatever you call it, remember there is a greater entity. Remember that this is Bhagwan's universe. And that entity, whether you call it God or no, that it has a recording software. And the data that is retrieved from that software is what forms karma. Karma is the result of our thoughts and our actions. And it will be because of the data that is recorded by the software based on what we're thinking. So remember always that there are consequences for our actions, for our thoughts, for our words. In this case, there were consequences for Brahma's words. Brahmaji paid the price for flaunting his ego without the required information. If even we may not recognize it, we all do or will, at some point in time, we do things and say things that we don't have the required and necessary information for. And we should always remember there can be consequences for that. So we have to be cognizant of what we say. Try to speak, especially from a position of, if there's a person in a position of influence, it is imperative for us to speak authoritatively, have the facts on our side, have the required knowledge. We all pray to Hanumanji, Balabuddhi Vidya Devamai Haro Klesha Vikar. That's what we're saying to Hanumanji. Give us the right information so that we can behave properly. Because if we don't, then it can be detrimental not only to us, but to others around us. Others, especially if you're a person of influence, you'd be influencing others on the wrong path, on a destructive path. So let's practice to think before we speak. Our scriptures, all of them give examples of how important this is. So next time, my friends, when we're about to say something untrue, something harsh, something negative, or something that's just unnecessary, let us hold ourselves back and think about how does this benefit you, or does it harm you? Does it benefit the people around you that you're influencing, or does it harm them? If we practice this daily, we will find that we're experiencing a greater level of joy and inner peace in our lives. I remember, I'm just looking at the time, we have a few minutes, so I'll close with a story, small little story. I think I said this story right here about a story about Socrates, based on when we speak, right? So I'll tell you very briefly this story before we close. Of course, in ancient Greece, we all heard of Socrates, and he held knowledge in very high esteem. So one day he met someone, and this person is saying to Socrates that, hey, do you know, have you heard this thing about your friend? So Socrates is listening like, about my friend? No, I didn't hear anything. Oh, okay, so let me tell you. Socrates says, oh, hold on. Before you tell me, hold on 1 minute. Before telling me anything, I'd like you to pass a triple test. The story is called a triple filter test, right? I'd like you to pass this test. A test? Yeah. Okay, what is the test? He says, first, before you tell me about my friend, it might be a good idea to take a moment and to filter what you're going to say. That is important. And the first filter is the filter of truth. Filter of truth? Yeah. So here's the thing. Socrates is saying to his friend, have you made absolutely sure that what you're about to tell me is true? Socrates is asking his friend, the person telling him. The guy says, no. I didn't double check on it. I didn't ensure it's true. Because actually I just heard it from someone. I just heard about it. And that's why I'm telling you now. Socrates says, okay, all right. Let's go to the second filter. Because you don't really know if it's true or not. So let's do the second filter. And the second filter is what you're about to tell me about my friend is something good. Is it something good? Well, actually, it's not something good. The friend is replying to Socrates. It's not something good, on the contrary. So Socrates continues, all right. So it's not true. It's not good. So there's one more filter left. You can still pass this and you'll be able to tell me. So if it's not good, obviously it means that it's something bad. That's the opposite to good. So you want to tell me something bad about my friend that you don't know that is true. But you can still pass this because, the third filter and, everything will be fine. So the third filter is, what you're about to tell me about my friend, is it going to be useful to me? The guy goes like, well, not really. I don't see any way that it can be useful to you. Socrates says, okay. If you want to tell me, or if what you're telling me or what you want to tell me, it's neither true nor good, nor is it useful to me, why again are you telling me this? The fellow could not answer. It's not true, it's not good, it's not useful. So this is what Brahma needed to have thought about. This is what we need to think about as human beings when we speak. Interestingly, that is why Sanatana Dharma has something that we call it Maun Vrat. This can be controversial. I'm not telling anybody to do Maun Vrat. Maun Vrat is not speaking. You know how better off most of us will be by speaking less? Look who's talking to her. I've been talking here for the last hour, right? But on a normal basis. Speak less trouble. Maun Vrat is not speaking. People do that for years and years. We can try it, when we wake up in the morning, try to stay an hour, 2 hours, whatever you do, don't say anything. That's a good start. Maun Vrat is actually a vrat, a fast that is recommended in the scriptures. It helps you not to get entangled in the world, and you can do so. Anyways, all the scriptures tell us this, not only Hindu scriptures, but the Bible also says this, that the quote is, let me see where it is. There are those who speak harshly, like the piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 12:18. The tongue of the wise brings healing. And those who speak harshly, it's piercing like a sword. There's also a beautiful story in the holy Quran about, Omar al-Khattab came upon Abu Bakr Sadiq pulling his tongue. Hey, what happened? Why are you doing that? That's not something good. You shouldn't be doing that. I hope God forgives you. He made you perfect and now you're trying to injure yourself. Abu Bakr replied that I am pulling my tongue because this tongue has brought me to very dangerous places. Meaning situations, very dangerous situations in life. And there's a beautiful verse actually in Bhagavad Gita. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam yata. Austerity of speech, Bhagavan is saying here. Sri Krishna is saying this is actually the 17th verse, this 15th verse, 17th chapter. That austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, words that are pleasing, words that are beneficial, and words that are not agitating to others. And also, doing all of that and remembering God, doing your meditation, doing your sadhana. And this is what real austerity is. Talking about that, I hope and pray that we've been able to take something away from the Katha this morning.